Seventh period, 1.2 notes for Math 2. Let's get going. You're going to do just about everything you did before on worksheet 1. It's almost all the same. The only big difference is that now you're going to have variables on both sides of your equal sign. It's almost like they decided, hey, let's make some harder problems and let's throw it on worksheet 2. So I don't think that that's a big deal. I think that is why I came up with these 4 steps instead of the same 4 steps that we did before. Sometimes we're going to have to do this first and then that second and that third. Sometimes we don't do 1 or 2. We just go right to number 3. You'll see. The only other thing that is new on worksheet 2 are these tricky questions. Sometimes you're going to work out a problem and the left side will equal the right side, and they're exactly the same thing, and they're an identity. So I wanted you to be ready, or for you to know that that is a possibility. Let me give you an example that you could write right next to it in your notes. Let me click this, switch over to my red pen. If you get something like a 2m plus 3 and a 2m plus 3, the left side of the equal sign is exactly the same thing as the right-hand side. Which means if you plug in any number in for m, if I plug in the number 1 for m over on this side, you'd have to plug in 1 on that side. They'll be identical. I can plug in the number 2, and if I plug in the number 2, they're going to be the same result. They're going to be equal. No matter what you plug in for m, they will always be the same. It's because it's an identity. They are identical. They produce the same result. They're the same equation. It's the same line on top of the line, if you know what I mean. Whereas this question down here, the no solution will be something different. Oh, and by the way, you could see that because if you were to subtract 2m, let's say you don't even notice it, sometimes you're going to get a number equals a number. If you ever get 3 equals 3, it's an identity. It's a trick question. It's a 5 equals 5, it's an identity. 12 equals 12, it is an infinite result. But there are some, let's scribble that out and go to 2m plus 3 equals 2m minus 7. See what I mean? These two equations are not the same. They are not identical. As a matter of fact, if you were to subtract 2m from both sides, subtract 2m and subtract 2m, what you would end up getting is 3 equals negative 7. Is 3 the same thing as negative 7? Does that even make sense? If the left side does not equal the right side, it means that there is no solution. There's a symbol for that, by the way. If you ever want to use the symbol, it looks like that. It's an O with a line through it. Feel free to use it. I know what it means. So that will happen when one equation is not equal to the other. Everything on worksheet 1 was an answer. When you get to the backside of worksheet 2, there's a possibility that there is a trick to it. So let's go ahead and do a couple problems together. Here's number 2. I do recommend that whatever is the smaller variable, that's the easiest one to move. So please always try to move the smaller variable like this. If you have a choice to move 5p this way or 4p this way, what's easier to move? 5 boxes or 4 boxes? I would move the 4 boxes. Instead of adding 4p, subtract 4p from both sides. 5p minus 4p is 1p. Do you have to write the 1? No, because 1 times anything is itself. 1 times 10 is 10. 1 times 100 is 100. 1 times p is just going to be p. And so p plus 6 equals negative 8. If you subtract 6 from both sides, you get that this is negative 14. By the way, you should be doing this on worksheet 2. Don't write it in your notes, just put it on the worksheet. And I've already talked to you on worksheet 1 how to use the fraction button. I do need to mention that on our calculator, since I am a calculator teacher, there is a difference between a subtraction sign on your calculator and a negative sign. Let me point to the negative sign right there. You can barely see it. Let me put it up a little bit closer. It's a parenthesis with a line in the middle. Your calculator cannot tell the difference between a negative and a subtraction. So if you were to bunch this in your calculator and you needed a -8, got to press the negative button, 8, and then you can put subtracted by 6 over there. And calculators, let me just see if I can get this in the screen, can do negatives and positives as well. If you're not good with negatives and positives, we're going to get really good at doing them on a calculator as well. Okay? So how does it get harder? Here's an example. Here's number 8. I would distribute this first. Subtract this group, which means minus 3b plus 15. 6 times this group would be 12b plus 30. What's easier to move, 12b's or negative 3b's? I'd probably move the negative 3b's. I'd do the opposite of subtracting 3b's since we're going to the other side of the equal sign. We do the opposite. 15b plus 30 equals 15. I would subtract 30. And then, since 15 is multiplying the b, I would divide by 15. Oh, so close, Mr. Paramo. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. -1 for the answer. Speaking of that, once you get your answer, you should plug it in and see if it works. -3 minus 15 is -18. With a negative sign is 18. Let's check that over here. 2 negative 2 is 3. 3 times 6 is 18. It works. You can check it mentally, or you can plug it in and go from there. I have a few more examples for you, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the time. I have number 9, 11. Oh my goodness, I have several down there, so let's get it done. Number 9. Sometimes you'll need to combine like terms first. 5x plus 3x is 8x. Combine the like terms. Then put your variables on the same side of the equal sign. Move addition and subtraction next. Whoa. Lastly, divide. So they just got bigger. That's all they did. We haven't got to the trick questions yet. When you get to the trick questions, the directions change. They actually start looking like this. It says, solve each equation. If the equation is an identity, write identity. If it has no solution, write no solution. If there is a solution, write that solution. So that happens on the back side of the worksheet. There's usually at least one of each of those, so keep that in mind. Let's just start number 11. Let's see what happens if it jumps out at us. Let's distribute this and get 24z plus 12. get this is 24z plus 12. If you get to this step and you're right at this equation, you look at that, this goes back to something I said before. Do you know what it is? If you do, go ahead and say it out loud. What is it?
Identity.
Good job. We'll stop right there and say it's an identity. The left side is identical to the right side. There are an infinite number of solutions if you plug in for the variable, and it'll always be the same. And by the way, if you subtracted 24z and 24z, you would get 12 equals 12. The left side equals the right side. Fractions? Yes, fractions don't go away. What would I do first here? I would put the variables together. I would subtract 1/4 m from this side and subtract 1/4 m from this side. 1/4 m minus 1/4 m is 0. That's just 3/4 over here plus 0 equals 3/4 m minus 1/4 m would be 2/4 m. A calculator would put that at 1/2, by the way. Minus 1/4 equals 3/4. I want the 1/2 m by itself. I need to get rid of the minus 1/4. I need to add 1/4 to the other side. Your calculator can do this for you. If you are not good with fractions, don't use that as an excuse. Our calculators can do it. You have to just be able to punch it in. And by the way, I think you guys can do this in your heads. 3/4 plus 1/4 is 1 whole. 4/4, 1 whole. So this is equal to 1 over here. 1 equals, that went away, 1/2 m. If you don't know how to get rid of 1/2, it's multiplying the m. Technically, you can divide by 1/2. Technically. You could take your calculator and press 1 divided by 1/2. It does that for you. Or you could multiply by 2/1 because the 2 will go into there and the 1 will go into there. It's the same thing as dividing by a fraction. Or punch it in your calculator. 1 times 2/1. Guess what? Our calculator is going to tell us that m is equal to 2. That's the answer. I know some of you do not like fractions or decimals. Just know I'm giving you a tool that you could use that will help you, and I know you can do it from there. Last example. I'm going to distribute this stuff first. And because I don't know what -5 times 5.25 is, I'm going to punch that in my calculator. -5 times 3.1 is equal to So I'm just distributing that and I'm making sure it stays a decimal. -6.2 times 2.5. Switch that to a decimal. Multiplying this out on my calculator. See, I can see something here. This is the same as that. But these two numbers are different. If you add 15.5x to this side, that's going to make 0. And you add 15.5x to this side, that's going to make 0. What you would have is you'd have -26.25 equals negative 11.78. Are those equal to each other?
No.
This is one of the trick questions. For this, you would say that there is what?
No solution.
No solution. There's the symbol. That's what I would write. And we'll stop your notes right there.